Well, good evening, everybody. Mark Hamilton here again to give you some of my commentary on where we go from here in the wake of the recent election we had and the political road ahead. Earlier in my prior video, we had talked a little bit about how we all might come together and rally around coherent and inclusive energy policy that we could all get into moving forward so that we could have a prosperous nation and as well develop alternative energies that would have less environmental impact. And boy, that touches on a lot of different subjects and a lot of ways that mistakes have been made in my view and that maybe ought to be corrected, or in fact it ought to be corrected so that we could do things properly. I had mentioned a lot about exploiting, shale rock-based hydrocarbons, and I mentioned fracking in my earlier video, which is just hydraulic fracturing where high-pressure liquids are used to break up bedrock and then release oil and gas. And I touched briefly on how that could be used to help us make a transition to alternative or green sources of energy, which by the way are a very good source, because all green sources of energy have a lot less environmental impact and certainly would be better for people and better for the planet. However, this is where it gets complex. It's great, it's wonderful, it is super to want to go ahead with these alternative forms of energy so that we can have a cleaner, better, more planet-friendly life. However, we have to get there without bankrupting ourselves and without tilting at windmills in a Quixotean style where we're just not getting anywhere. Some of you might know my background and some of you might not, but my training is as a physical chemist. I do hold a doctorate in physical chemistry, and I've worked as a physicist on natural systems and remote and environmental sensing for some 31 years before going into this gig, or potential gig, as a pundit and commentator. And what I've seen over and over and over again is how money can be wasted and projects can fail when you don't have the understanding or technological maturity or the commercial capacity to take a brilliant idea, a wonderful idea, and implement it, because you're simply missing the building blocks to make it work. And let me just back off and give a little example here. I know a lot of folks that are interested in alternative energy say, well, of course it's a good idea for the federal government to make investments in green energy sources, solar, wind, hydro, geothermal, etc. After all, look at all the great technology we got from having the Apollo program and going to the moon. And oh, by the way, look at the internet. Well, what you really have to take note of and be careful of is that while government can be extremely helpful in conducting basic research and uncovering and unfolding the natural laws that underpin a commercial technological development, when the government jumps into the marketplace to attempt to work in the commercial market and then becomes a player, that makes it a competitor and makes it almost a referee and a participant, where it's picking winners and losers. It's trying to do something good, but it's got its thumb on the scales because totally private capital is now competing with the government. And if I get back to the internet example, which, oh, by the way, was called DARPANet. DARPA stands for the Defense Advanced Projects Research Agency, and I worked on their on their funding because I did work in the U.S. Army's technological base, science and technology, and we worked with DARPA. Those investments in the internet were with universities who developed a way to transmit packetized data and to have it go reliably between point A and point B, and to be able to read that data accurately and easily using something called a browser. Okay, once that was developed, once the packets were transmitted based on R&D, and in fact, so somebody even got this little idea, gee, maybe there's something we could call Netscape that could let you read it. Once that was done, George Herbert Walker Bush then basically stepped aside and gave the technology to the for-profit private sector to commercialize it and turn it into the internet. So while basic and some small amount of applied research was done, what the government then did not do was go found Cisco. And that's the difference, say, versus Solyndra, okay, that we have basically talked about. The elements of the green energy revolution are going to be supported in optimally exploiting our hydrocarbon base, okay, so that we are prosperous, that we have a strong economy, and that the fruits of that hydrocarbon-based economy will generate enough excess capital so that basic and applied research can be done, so that we can get 10 times the energy density out of a battery, so that we can build an electric car. I don't want to buy an electric car that goes 25 or 30 miles, or that requires me to turn the air conditioning off because I can't get to where I want to go. So the Chevy Volt bothers me. Give me an electric car that functions at a reasonable price, that doesn't require a $10,000 subsidy at the commercial market, put the subsidy up front and do the R&D instead of subsidizing the assembly line, okay, and then we have something. So what I'm asking people to do is to step back a little bit and get out of the theological realm of thinking about dirty hydrocarbons versus clean green energy and making that some sort of competition where we have to, abolish hydrocarbon energy so that the green revolution can take over. Actually, our shale oil and gas, which amounts to trillions of barrels of shale oil and thousands of trillions of cubic feet of natural gas, can actually give us an energy revolution. I know, by the way, the natural gas would cut our carbon emissions in half. Just putting that aside, we go that way, we'll have the money to make that transition and to lead the world in making that transition, and we can take 20 or 30 years to do it right, okay, and basically have that world that we like where we're not carbon loading the atmosphere. We don't even know if the carbon loading we're doing now is all that bad or all that good. And I'm going to get into that as we go ahead in the future and talk about what if we spend our money as a nation reducing carbon loading, and it turns out that the natural sunspot cycle is responsible for climate change, and we've spent several $1 trillion reducing carbon emissions, and Wall Street really needs a seawall and floodgates because there's nothing we can do about climate change from our perspective. What if that happens? I'm going to save that till later. For the time being, though, I would like to get your feedback on what you simply think about the fact of, hey, wait a minute, let's not go out and bore holes everywhere in the country, but let's, in a sensible way, start using the resources we have now to make us independent of geopolitical forces overseas and economic forces that will take our money and use it against us. Let's get independent of those forces, and let's generate the money to make a huge investment in our scientific industrial tech base that gives us the fundamental research underpinnings to move ahead with green energy. And with that, I think I'm going to sign off for the evening. And I think maybe my wife wants to make a comment, so I'll invite her in if she wants to make some comments. So I'm going to take a sip of soda.
Okay, well, you kind of got to one of the things that I was going to wave you along. I liked the thing that you said about that if the, taxpayer money gets all used up on, well, you said it, you kind of said it in this video.
A poor country is not going to lead the green revolution. A wealthy country is going to lead the green revolution. And if anybody disagrees with it, all you've got to do is correlate wealth of nations with the cleanliness of their atmosphere, the cleanliness of their soil, the cleanliness of their water. The wealthier the nation, the more environmentally friendly it is. So we need to lead and not lead from behind. We need to get out in front and utilize our resources in an efficient capitalistic manner to generate the excess revenue to allow us to then go ahead and make that transition to a greener future, basically. And as I said before, if we start burning natural gas, we actually cut our carbon emissions in half. That was never dreamed of by the United Nations Commission on Climate Change, that we could ever come up with that source. But apparently we do, and a lot of it's locked up in shale in the form of natural gas. So once we bring that into the mix, then I think a lot of folks can be made happy. And I'm looking forward to the federal government and the House and the Senate and the White House and President Obama and everybody to get together and to have us move forward and to basically do this, because there is literally a new economic renaissance that is possible in the United States, and it could be actually led by an energy revolution. So let's not sit here and cry in our beers about the new normal being 1.5% or 2% growth. So now I'm touching a little on economics, but everything touches everything in this world, and sometimes pulling it together is difficult. However, let's go ahead and do this. I'm looking forward to your feedback, and I'm hoping you may even influence your congressman to back this sort of energy policy. So I'm going to now ask Vital Finds if she has any other comments before I sign off.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay, well, I am wide awake and perky, but I'm not going to burn up the snowball here with a lot more talking. I don't know how long I've been on, but I think if I keep going, the hot air coming from my mouth is going to make the snowball melt. Okay, so we're not going to do that. Anyway, talk to you tomorrow or the next day. Bye-bye.